For many people within the Protestant community, the marching season is something to be celebrated.
We are dignified orange men.
For many people within the Catholic community, it's something to be dreaded.
I can't recall ever being so frightened in my entire life.
There is a clear conflict of rights.
Our civil and religious liberty has been denied us.
There is undoubtedly a right to march and to assemble and to freedom of expression. At the same time, there is a right to freedom of movement.
We're hemmed in like animals.
To be free from fear, oppression and intimidation.
Countless people around will tell you about their injuries.
Both Unionists and Nationalists have suffered from problems of policing.
They proceeded to beat them, kick them and drag them off to horrific scenes, you know.
The police should use the minimum force necessary.
They just kicked the guy in the head. You just kicked him. Or just, could you do any fucking better?
If a government continues to abuse people's rights, you'll never have a lasting peace. The marching season each year is viewed very differently by significant numbers of people within the two main communities in Northern Ireland. For very many people within the Protestant community, this is a festival event, something to be celebrated. For very many people within the Catholic community, it's something to be dreaded. There is a clear conflict of rights. There is undoubtedly a right to march and to assemble and to freedom of expression. At the same time, there is a right to freedom of movement, and there is a right to be free from fear and oppression and intimidation. Those rights have to be balanced. And the way in which any confrontation between marchers and residents is policed is key to ensuring whether things escalate or whether things improve. In these situations, the police should use the minimum force necessary, acting with a view to preserving life. The particular problems which we have seen are where protesters who are unhappy about a march coming through a particular area have been very roughly removed from the road, where they've been subjected to physical abuse, where they've been subjected to quite shocking sectarian verbal abuse, and where their freedom of movement has been very considerably limited.
I never gave any resistance at all. I just lay there, they lifted me up, I was praying, and when they got me down, they kicked the backs of the legs off me. And they were laughing at me. I was saying the Hail Mary, and they were saying F the Hail Mary and all this, you know, to me, but I never answered them. I just kept on praying to dump me on the ground.
What happens in a situation where you have police officers on the street without any identification?
I went up to police lines and asked, could somebody please tell me what's going on here? One of them grabbed me by the arm, took me into them, right into the circle. One of them said, Rosemary, you Fenian fucker, and they threw me about a bit. And I said, can I have your number, please? Somebody else said, fuck off. The difficulty there was, because of the way they were dressed, there were no numbers distinguishable. I can't recall ever being so frightened in my entire life.
Obviously, if you cannot identify the individual officer responsible for the ill treatment which you've received, then you have really virtually no opportunity to have a remedy. If a crowd is confronted from the outset with people who have shields and batons drawn, that is not going to calm the situation. We've seen situations where people were battened on the road, a use of force which really is disproportionate.
I got this scored of the head over.
And how did that happen? Tell us how that happened.
I know you see, Constable hit me with his baton.
This morning we heard the siren. It was about 3:20, and we asked the soldiers what was happening. They said they were in to protect us.
They proceeded to systematically to take the people one by one and beat them on the ground and kick them and drag them off to horrific scenes, you know.
They just kicked the guy in the head in front of me, and I went over to him. I says, you just kicked him. He says, no, I didn't. I says, I photographed you kicking him. He says, no, I didn't. He says, right, you out of here, out of here. I says, I'm not going anywhere. I says, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. And he was in charge. He says, could you do any fucking better? I says, I could do it a lot better. I says, you shouldn't be doing it.
There's a very, very heavy presence from the police. In some of these situations, people are effectively confined in their own homes. We've had Land Rovers right outside people's front doors, which has made it impossible for them to get out.
that is an ordinary day, that they said that we were going to have, there'd be no inconveniences to the ordinary people in this area when these marches come down. Can you say this is an ordinary day on the Ormeau Road? We're hemmed in like animals.
Soldiers are very often seen using the sights on their guns to focus at particular people. And that can only serve to highlight tension, to instill fear and hostility in the aftermath of some of these events. Instead of withdrawing quickly, the police and the army have remained. There's almost a game of cat and mouse between the young people on the street and the police, where the police will rev up towards them and then they'll withdraw, stones will be thrown, and before you know it, you're back into a full-scale situation of serious public disorder.
A young girl is now in hospital with her leg broken. Countless people around will tell you about their injuries. I have a plastic bullet in my pocket just to show you what a plastic bullet is, and this is what people were being hit by.
The use of plastic bullets on the Bellaghy road was uncalled for and was provocative and endangered people's life. We recorded one petrol bomb being fired, but that was in the wake of plastic bullets being used.
The young guy showed me where he'd been hitting at arm's length. It's against their own rules. They're supposed to fire it below the waist, yet this is what was happening.
Plastic bullets are not used in Britain, and plastic bullets are an unacceptable weapon. There was an official inquiry carried out by Her Majesty's Inspector of Constabulary, and he himself concluded that on occasion guns and the use of plastic bullets can exacerbate situations. That's a conclusion which we share. It's presented as a non-lethal weapon, but the reality is that it has led to the deaths of 17 people in Northern Ireland, 8 of them children.
Plastic bullets have been fired at both Unionists and Nationalists. Both have suffered from problems of policing. On the one hand, residents clearly have the right to freedom of movement. That's guaranteed under international law. And similarly, the marchers have the right to march, freedom of association and expression. So there's a question of how society mediates that conflict of rights. There will always be contentious events, parades, marches, demonstrations, and policing of those events has to be completely fair and effective.
The rule of law depends on ensuring that everybody is protected. If a government continues to abuse people's rights, you'll never have a lasting peace. So we'd like to see people around the world focusing on Northern Ireland and urging their government and urging the United Kingdom government to put human rights at the heart of the peace process.